Hello everyone, welcome back to the show once again with another episode of Exploder just for you. My name is Dan Fraley. As always, this Exploder get right to it. Now we're going to get back to what we've been trying to do for a couple weeks now. Let's get back to the nostalgia. That's the point. The really stupid, the weird, the odd, the bizarre. And then we get back to it and we have a little fun with it. That's right, I'm talking about wrestling as we remember it in the 1990s. I talk about the 90s a lot. I do know some of the 80s. I started watching stuff from the 80s. I watched it in the 90s. My cousin had some old tapes. My first show I ever saw was WrestleMania 5. The Mega Powers Explode. I'm not going to do a Macho Man Randy Savage impersonation. That being an insult to everyone. But I do know the 80s, but I talk about the 90s because I grew up in the 90s. I'm a 90s kid. So, you know, it's this, Nickelodeon, and when phones still had cords. Nostalgia. Ding. Now, this time I want to talk about things people forget about pro wrestling, especially in the 1990s. Things that people just don't think about because either they were small or they're just like a piece of trivia that are just odd and bizarre. So, without any further ado, I just want to tell you about some of the more, not even bizarre, but sort of the odd things that happen in pro wrestling. I'm going to start on one that's going to blow your mind. The last leader of the original NWO that existed from 1996 to 1999. None of that NWO 2000 BS. Certainly no NWO 2002 with the black and white and Scott Hall being there for 6 weeks. No. The original NWO, as we remember it, from 1996 to 1999. The last leader was, did you know it? Stevie Ray. Yeah, Stevie Ray from Harlem Heat. That one. The guy who wore the pinstripes and was only in Fall Brawl 1998 because he had to be the one to take the pin. Stevie Ray. Let me explain some backstory here. The NWO, of course, split between the NWO Hollywood and the NWO Wolfpack. Everyone knows the story. The rosters changed a little bit. Randy Savage was supposed to be a bigger part of the Wolfpack. Then he got injured. Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude were in the Wolfpack. Then they went back to Hollywood for no real reason. So on and so forth. Well, then the finger poke of doom happens. Yay! Which means the NWO had gotten back together. But it created two different groups within the NWO. So they created the NWO Elite, which of course was Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Buff Bagwell for some reason. You know, they needed a gigolo. And so on and so forth. And then Scott Steiner as well, because, you know, he was their supplier. And then on the other end were all the NWO black and white guys, the guys who stayed in the black and white shirts, the B team as they were tend to be called and were. These guys, of course, were for some reason Kurt Hennig, Brian Adams, Vincent, Horace Hogan, pretty much anybody who they threw an NWO t-shirt on for the most part that shouldn't have been the NWO a long time ago, they stuck around. Now, the NWO Elite, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and all that sort of faded out around February, March of 1999. Very quickly, Hogan and Nash sort of went their own ways, and it wasn't really a big blow-up. It was just they both went after the world title, and it sort of became its thing. But the NWO B team, the black and white, still existed. So, apparently, Hulk Hogan had gone around, Hollywood Hogan, my apologies, brother, had gone around telling different guys that they were the leader of the B team. Why it mattered, I don't know. It's like being like the toughest guy in preschool. Who really gives a crap? It's like you and your little minions. Like, it's like being the teacher of a preschool and realizing, I could beat these kids up. It's not saying much, you know. It's like being the captain of a horrible sports team. Who cares? But he had told different guys they were in charge, and it finally came to a head in April of 1999, where Stevie Ray won a four-way match, I guess, between Brian Adams, Vincent, and Horace Hogan, the only four people that actually wanted to run the NWO B team. Could you imagine, first of all, could you imagine a group run by Horace Hogan? Wow, that would have been special. Not in the good way either, more of in the helmet, Special Olympics, God help him for trying type of way, but I digress. Now, of course, this whole angle, the NWO 1999, the last iteration of the original NWO as we all know it, it just faded away. It didn't really have any blow-ups either. Like, literally, nothing happened. They just stopped doing it. Brian Adams walked away from them because they were arguing with each other. He walked away, got into a limo that supposedly had Kiss in it. I wonder if they lip-synced that interview. And he became the Demon. He was the first guy. He did like twice as the Demon. Never wrestled as the Demon. He just became the Demon and then decided, wow, this is stupid, you know. And I was Kona Crush, all right? And he thought that was stupid. Vincent became a cowboy for some reason. Stevie Ray just joined his brother in Harlem Heat again, because back to the well. And Horace Hogan went back to washing Uncle Hulk's car. So everyone ended up exactly where they belonged. So that's a little piece of trivia. Another one that's really going to blow your mind. I never really thought about this until I actually read it, and I actually did some research on it. Goldberg won his first WCW title in June 1998. Georgia Dome, pitting Hulk Hogan. Great match. Really did everything he needed to do. He beat Hogan. He undefeated streak. really great stuff, right? Did really well. I mean, really, they gave away a pay-per-view main event on TV, but to be fair to WCW, they sort of did that at that time. They were doing that all the time, so it wasn't really out of the ordinary. They made a good chunk of money. They announced it on Thunder. They did it the next Monday, and they still packed the place. Georgia Dome, Goldberg used to play for the Falcons, wins the title from Hulk Hogan. You can't really beat it. But what people don't remember about this, and this is one of the odd ones, what people don't remember is, though he won the world title, though Goldberg won the world title in June of 1998, he didn't main event a pay-per-view until October at Halloween Havoc against Diamond Dallas Page. Hear me out. He won the belt in June 1998. He beat Hogan. The next pay-per-view was July's Bash at the Beach. What was the main event? Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman versus Karl Malone, Diamond Dallas Page. Now, it makes sense. Rodman and Malone were in the NBA Finals that year. I mean, at that time, especially as big as WCW was, you can't find a bigger main event at that time. So that's excusable. That's understandable. Now, Goldberg, the new world champion, what was he doing? At this same pay-per-view, was he also in a major match, maybe the semi-main? Not quite the main, but maybe the semi-main. No, he was in a match with Kurt Hennig that went 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Yep, his first pay-per-view as world champion. Now, in this case, I can excuse it not being the main event because of the caliber of athletes that were in the main event. You had Malone and Rodman right off the NBA Finals. You could say what you want about wrestling and say what you want about Eric Bischoff. That was a perfect storm to put as the main event. But at the same time, your new world champion's facing Kurt Hennig in 3 minutes and 50 seconds. That's a TV match at best. That was his first pay-per-view as world champion. So let's go to August. Road Wild. What's the main event? Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff versus Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno. Okay, now again, Bischoff justifies this as, well, he had a network show, and I get it. I mean, everyone sees the picture of Jay Leno putting Hulk Hogan in a wrist lock. Like, I get it. And WCW in 1998 was like the biggest thing. It was kicking butt left and right. So I get it. Again, I kind of get it. Like, I don't get it as well as like Rodman and Malone, because I think that was bigger, because that was the zeitgeist. That was like right then and there. That was they'd just come off the NBA Finals. You have sports fans, you have wrestling fans, and again, that perfect storm. Jay Leno, Bischoff, that whole thing, that could have been done at any time. That as long as WCW existed and Jay Leno was hosting the Tonight Show with his giant chin and making fun of people that don't know state capitals. I don't know. But I felt like it could have been done at any time. So really there was no impetus on doing it then, but they did. Okay, so again, what's the world champion now for his second pay-per-view? What's his second pay-per-view Goldberg doing? He's in an NWO Invitational that goes 7 minutes 58 seconds, where he defeats the Giant, who's leaving the company anyway. Yep, second pay-per-view. Beats Kurt Hennig, and then the next month he beats a bunch of NWO scrubs and defeats the Giant, who's on the way out anyway, and was a couple heated negotiations away from jobbing to Horace Hogan, because why not at that point? So let's go to September. September, Fall Brawl. What was the main event? Well, of course, Fall Brawl was, but not the regular Fall Brawl, the 4 or 5-on-5 type deal, where there's actually an angle going into it. No. This was the fancy one they did in 1998 with the 9-man, 3-team, NWO, Hollywood, NWO, Wolfpack, WCW with Roddy Piper, the Ultimate Warrior for some reason, Diamond Dallas Page, and all this stuff. Again, the one where Stevie Ray appeared just to take the pin. You know the one. And, yeah, it was a 9-man thing. It was set up Hogan and Warrior, and Diamond Dallas Page won. And, of course, because it was WCW, he had to get the pin on Stevie Ray because no one else in that match was going to take a fall. And you could win by pinfall, which was stupid. It was War Games, and the fact that there was a cage involved, and that's about it. And, of course, in that one, the closest Goldberg came to that one was when the mini-me version of him lost to Chris Jericho. Yep, that one also happened. Entertaining, but again, I'm going to leave that the way it is. So now we get to October. Halloween Havoc. This is his first main event. He won the title in June. It is now October. The first main event for him. In this case, he's actually booked, because he wasn't even booked at Fall Brawl. He's booked in this one for Halloween Havoc in a main event match against Diamond Dallas Page. It goes about 10 minutes. It's a good match, and the feed cuts off about 5 minutes in, because WCW thought they had the extra time on the satellite, and they didn't, so they cut it off. But at least Hogan and Warrior got 14 minutes. That really saved the night. So let's go. We go to October. Now, hold on. Let's keep going. November, World War III. The World War III match was, of course, the main event, right? Main event was World War III. That makes total sense. The name of the event, it's 60 men, 3 rings. You don't know what's going on at any time. Chaos ensues. Looks like a car crash inside a tornado inside a Spike Lee movie. I don't know. And what was Goldberg doing that night? Sing it home! Goldberg didn't have a match that night. Oh, man. So he didn't main event that night. Okay, let's go. The next time he main evented was December of 1998, Starrcade, where he lost to Kevin Nash after a stun gun, Bam Bam Bigelow, pretty sure the 82nd Airborne, a monster truck, some guy named Dennis, I don't know, super gonorrhea, everything came out and took him out for him to get the pin, and of course, that's what they did. And so this guy, so Goldberg, the first time he won the WCW World title, he main evented. After he did it, he main evented exactly 2 pay-per-views, and the first one, the feed got cut off by a show that ran long, and the second one, he got beat by Kevin Nash, a cattle prod, and Creative Control. Wow, you know? Honestly, it's all the stuff he talked about, all the stuff that Bill Goldberg talked about that would be his first run, I wasn't happy that one year. I'm amazed he didn't say more disparaging things about WCW at this time, because they had the greatest thing, and they just found a way to undercut it. They found a way to make him, he was one of the biggest stars in the company. He came out of nowhere. They made a big deal. He had all this going for him, and they went, you know, it'd be really cool. Let's only put him in 2 main events as world champion. You know why? Because Jay Leno needs the spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, that was WCW in 1998. Enjoy it. This episode of Exploder is brought to you by The Best of Virgil. You hated him as the $1 Million Man's bodyguard. You sort of got behind him as a pseudo-boxer. You were indifferent to him in the NWO, and you forgot he was once a cowboy. Now's your chance to relive all the memories in one DVD collection with The Best of Virgil, featuring classic matches like, no, that was Coco Beware, or now you'll receive a photo signed by the $1 Million Man. For an extra $100, Virgil will deliver it to you himself. He'll do anything for money. Order now. Operator is standing by. Call 1-800-5-VIRGIL. Now, to make fun of the other side, just so you don't think I'm making fun of WCW exclusively, let's talk about the WWF. That's right, I said the WWF because screw the pandas. Did you know that X-Pac once led a group? He did, very shortly, but he did. Third banana in the NWO and second banana in D-Generation X Dreams, X-Pac once had his own group called X Factor.
Hey, yo, you dealing with the X Factor.
Yeah, it's true. It was a group with Albert, who was on gimmick number 3, who was right before A-Train, and Just Incredible, who you also remember as Aldo Montoya without the jockstrap. They came to the ring with a song by Uncle Kracker. If you don't know who Uncle Kracker is, first of all, God, you're lucky. Second of all, he was the DJ for Kid Rock, who actually came out with his own albums, because at the time, we lived in a society where people associated with Kid Rock were also famous. Uncle Kracker, Joe C. Yeah, both of those guys appeared on WWF programming, and both of them were famous, aside from Kid Rock. Dear God, what did we do? The song itself was actually a song already existing from Uncle Kracker, and they just dubbed X Factor over existing lyrics. Yeah, that's how much thought was put into this. They took Just Incredible, took the jockstrap off him, took his jean shorts on, because we all know the only person allowed to wear jean shorts in wrestling are Raven and John Cena. And now it's just John Cena. The angle was really forgotten pretty quickly because the WCW-ECW alliance came along. Just Incredible turned immediately and joined the ECW side, which immediately joined the WCW side because Vince McMahon decided he was going to have ECW on there and didn't realize he hadn't bought the licenses yet because ECW and the trademarks were in bankruptcy court, and Vince McMahon thought, I'll just put them on TV anyway. Yeah, you have to buy the licenses, genius. So that's why it became the Alliance. Albert became just another scrub in the middle. At the famous Invasion pay-per-view, he was in a 6-man with The Big Show and Billy Gunn against WCW guys. I don't know. He sort of fell in there. And X-Pac had the distinction of being the only WWF guy in the whole show to get booed. That's right, X-Pac got him heat. The angle itself, like I said, really fizzled out, but I think it's interesting to say that you have X-Pac, Albert, Just Incredible, Uncle Kracker, and someone high on shrooms or whatever X-Pac gave them at the time. They thought this was going to work out. Oh dear God. Now let's move away from the WWF, screw the pandas, and let's go to ECW. Well, let's go to really all of them. This is the one I'm going to close out with. When we talk about pro wrestling, we talk about the weird things. There are things that people remember, things that happened, and then there's details that people don't quite remember. Those little details that people leave out, or maybe they just don't remember in general. Everyone remembers Rick Rude appearing on Raw and Nitro on the same night. After Montreal, Rick Rude personally called Eric Bischoff, of course having the connection to the AWA, worked for WCW before. As soon as the Montreal screw job happens, Rick Rude calls Eric Bischoff and says he wants to come to WCW. He was a big friend of Bret Hart, didn't like Shawn Michaels. worked with him on TV, and wow, you could tell the chemistry, and didn't like it. And as soon as Montreal happened, as soon as Brett screwed Brett, Rick called Eric, and he made the deal. Now, of course, Rick Rude was on a per-night deal at the time. Every time the WWE put a guy on TV that wasn't on contract, it bit them in the ass. This had some teeth. So immediately after Montreal, Rick Rude calls, says he wants to go to WCW. WCW at the time, they were paying God knows what money. They were paying money to guys who never wrestled for them. You think they're not going to pick up Rick Rude to show up in a suit? Oh, you bet your ass they will. So they offer him a contract. He comes in. Now, the night after Montreal was a taped Raw. And I know this is well-tread ground, but understand the backstory here. If you don't know the story, I don't know how you don't know the story, but, you know, I'm just a little bit of backstory to explain the other part of it. It was a taped Raw. So Rick Rude shows up. He's got the scruffy looking beard, because that's what he did at the time. The little scruff, like not even the 5 o'clock shadow, like the been up all night trying to solve a murder shadow. You know the ones. He goes out, introduces Shawn Michaels, the whole thing. Now, he knows that the second they did the live and then they did the tape for the next week. Raw would do the live and then the tape for the next week. So he's on the live tape for the next week. He knows he's going to WCW. So 8 o'clock the next Monday, the NWO comes out first segment at 8 o'clock. And out comes, of all people, Rick Rude, who no longer has the murder beard. So now you have a guy, then an hour later, you see him on Raw, which is clearly showing that this show is taped. Brilliant. It's a little detail, but that was brilliant. Now that's what people remember. That's something that was on the Monday Night Wars DVD, the original one from like 2004, 2005, that everyone talks about. What they don't talk about, and understandably in the narrative of the Monday Night Wars, it doesn't mean anything, but in the grand scope of things, what people don't remember about that is he also appeared on ECW. See, while he was working with the WWE on a per-night deal, he was also working with ECW. While he was the insurance policy to Shawn Michaels, he was a mentor, I don't know, to Shane Douglas, finding him opponents, as Shane Douglas was the ECW World Champion at the time. Well, in one of his last appearances, I believe, could be wrong here, but his last appearance in ECW, he introduced Shane Douglas's new opponent for the ECW World title, fellow Triple Threat member, Bam Bam Bigelow. Bigelow would hit the ring. Sonny, Francine, Chris Candido all would try to convince him otherwise. He said no. He did the match and he wins. Now, of course, this leads to him losing the title back to Shane Douglas at November to Remember 1997. Don't know why, which of course was held in Pittsburgh. Brilliant. Hometown boy comes strong, wins the match. Belly to belly suplexes a big guy with tattoos on his head through a table. You know, the classic story. This would of course be Rick Rude's final appearance in ECW. Now, what makes this significant is, while he's doing this, because ECW is syndicated, it was on in different markets. Well, in this case, in certain markets, because of the tape delay and because of how the syndication worked, at one point in certain markets, Rick Rude also appeared on ECW that same week. Sometimes on the same day, if you really think about it. In some cases on the same day. So this guy not only appeared on WCW Nitro, not only appeared on WWE Raw, but he also appeared on ECW's weekly hardcore television in the same week, and in some cases, the same day. That is something that will never be replicated again. It's something that's so unique, and I think it's a small detail, but that's a detail that people often overlook because of the larger narrative that is Raw versus Nitro, WF for WCW. ECW was there, and this was the only guy who's done all three. I have covered in previous episodes. If you want to find out guys who actually worked in all three companies, I have an episode about that. Check that out in the archives. Check it out on the Facebook page, Podbean, what have you. But this is a guy who appeared in all three in the same week. That's truly amazing, and I think that makes the story even better. So I just wanted to leave you with that. Again, just wanted to put that out there. I thought that was really cool. Before I go, I want to say a quick shout out. I'm part of, as you know, the ZTO podcast network. I've been working with Frank for a few years now. We do things like the Gromy Show. I work with comedian Jake Hill on Hillbilly Therapy. I've been doing Exploder now for a little over a year. We're just starting season 2. I do the Gromy Show with ZTO. There's a great organization, a great group of guys and girls doing really cool stuff on podcasts, videos, a little bit of everything, and it's so fun. So I want to give a shout out real quick to ZTO Podcast, Zombie Takeover TV, ZTO Productions, whatever you want to call it, whatever medium you use to watch or listen. Thank you for being part of it, and I'm glad to be part of this network. So keep up the good work. I will continue to do what I do and create new episodes of Exploder and, other projects and as they come along. So just wanted to get that out there. Until next time, my name's Dan. This is Exploder. Have a good one.